My name is Virginia Kearney. I'll be doing the grant workshop today, and my job is to be proposal development specialist here at Baylor. And I help people through providing grant training through workshops like this, which we have both in PowerPoint form as well as in videos. I also provide, I think I said, grant tool, along with doing the trainings, I do grant toolkits. So if you're doing a grant and you need some assistance with facilities or a toolkit, please contact me. I'm happy to provide that. I also do grant editing. So if you got a grant and you'd like to have someone edit through to see if I can make it more competitive and make your grant argument better, that's one of the things that I offer. This particular workshop, I have two parts of it. One is really learning Baylor's tools for finding grants and a little bit about some tips on how to use them. I'm really going to focus on that part of the workshop. And then if I don't know what I did, can you see it? Okay, I'm going to stop the, can you see what do you see? That? Okay. I think we're okay. I am, like I said, I'm not too good at this. I'm going to focus on those tools. And if we have a chance, I'm going to get to this understanding part, like how, once you find a grant that you want, how can you evaluate to see if it's the best grant for you? So we have a lot of different ways that you can find grants. I'm going to hopefully help you decide which ones are going to be working best for you and kind of go through these as a whole. Before we talk about the different tools, though, I really want to address what kinds of things that grants can fund, because everyone always thinks, of course, about research and supplies, PI time, personnel, equipment, the things that research funding from grants can help you with. But there are a variety of other things that I want to make you aware of that you can be thinking about as you're looking for grants. One is early career support. In November 7th, I'm going to be giving a workshop just about early career support and the ones that are available. And that often involves research, but also developing as a teacher scholar, mentoring, and developing an independent research agenda is usually included that. Early career support is really not just for your research, but focusing on you and developing you for the future of your career. There are also grants for fellowships. We're encouraging people at Baylor to consider Fulbrights. They've developed a lot of grants for Fulbrights for students, and now we're encouraging people to do that for the faculty to do that as well. There are travel grants. There are grants for organizing conferences. There are a lot of, actually, especially in humanities, a lot of grants that are available for if you have a particular topic that you'd like to bring people from around the country to discuss, grants specifically for doing that. There are also grants to develop educational programs, whether that's K-12 or university education, grants for developing curriculum, teacher training, particularly in STEM, and then also grants for improving courses and improving ways that we're mentoring the next generation of researchers. And there are grants for digital scholarship. A lot of collections are they want to make them more available for scholars and for the public, and so they have some specific digital scholarship grants. There are grants also for public programming. That would be mostly for people in the arts and in music and in anything where you would want to do something in the community, whether it's a festival, something in person, or whether it be a film or lecture series. And then there's two other kinds of grants. One would be a resource focused grant. And I like to talk about this because they're usually given by something that has a collection of things like a museum, a library, or some other sort of collection. And I mention that because if you're going to be researching somewhere, it's usually helpful to look to see if that place that you're going to is going to have a grant. Sometimes it's a small grant, but it can help you pay for your travel or pay for your time while you're researching there. And then there are also subject focused grants. And the last two are ones that people don't always think about a lot, which is why I like to point them out. A subject focused grant is given usually by a professional organization or an industry to research that particular subject. And if you belong to a professional organization, it's a good idea to check and see if they have any grants that are available for what you do. And if your research involves some kind of industry, that can be a place where you could look for grants too. So how do you find funding? This is an overview. It has the links to the different places we're going to be going to in a few minutes. First of all, I suggest that it's really not, if you're beginning in the funding area, it's not so much about finding just individual grants, but it's about finding those potential funders for you. And I find that most people usually have maybe 1 to 3 potential federal or government funders, and then maybe 5 to 15 foundation funders. And so when I'm urging people to find their grants, I'm asking you to really think about finding those people that will be funding you. And then once you've found, even if they don't have a grant that's available right now, but they fund in your particular area, it helps if you found them and then you keep track of them by getting email updates or continually looking at their website for things that are they're coming on. Good to see you. Glad you're able to make it in. Then we're going to go through the Baylor internal funding that's available, and that's usually good to check with that, especially if you haven't gotten started with funding. That might be a good way to get your first pilot data. Although people also have startup funds that help with that now too. And then after you've really looked at the internal funding possibilities, you want to look for some external funding. And so we have two different documents that will help you look at some funding that we've really kind of curated already for Baylor professors. And those are usually a good way to get started and look through those different lists and see which ones might work for you. And then after that, you probably want to look at some of the search engines. So there's grants.gov and then texas.gov for Texas grants. And then we have two subscribed search engines, Pivot and Grant Forward, and we'll be looking through those and how they can help you. And those ones can actually send you updates from some of your grant searches. And then after that, after you've found some of those grants, you want to be able to evaluate whether those are ones that you're eligible for, and then also whether the ones that are going to fund what you actually want to research. So the Baylor internal funding is primarily our biggest chunk of funding is the Baylor 1URC grants. Those are peer reviewed by faculty members. You can look at the faculty research committee and find out who's on that committee and who you are preparing your grant for. And there's really two types. There's the $5,000 standard grant, and then there's the larger $5,000 to $50,000 grant. So the $5,000 grant is meant for just getting you started on some research and perhaps maybe finishing a project so you'll be ready for external funding. The second larger amount is actually intended to help you respond to reviewer comments, particularly on a federal grant or a larger foundation grant, which will allow you to resubmit. So you've gotten your reviewer comments back and they've asked you to do something more than what you've already done. And so that's what this grant is for. So you'll put your reviewer comments in, you'll explain how you're going to be doing certain amount of work that can be done with that amount of money, and then how that will be responding to the comments to make you more competitive. So that's really a very helpful thing, a seed amount of money to help you be more competitive. There are also some small internal funding, and these are actually a little bit hard to find, and some people don't know about them. So I always like to point them out. The first one is for the URSA grants, which are for student research. And it's just a small amount, but it can help you to have undergraduate students working in your lab or in your project. And some of them are ones that students will be applying for, and then some are ones that you would be applying for. So I encourage you to consider doing that. And then the second one is from Baylor Academy of Teaching and Learning. That the Academy of Teaching and Learning has a lot of programs that will enable you to improve your teaching, but it also offers some grants. So there's the development grants, which allow you to develop a new course or to improve a course that you've already done. And then there are also the teaching exploration grants, which allow you to do research on the teaching that you've been doing to see if you can improve it or see what has been working and being more effective. And sometimes that is not just for people that are in the education program, but although you might want to partner with somebody as you're evaluating that, but that could be a really useful way if you want to do some grants for teaching. And that actually can be a way you can pilot grants, which if then you wanted to get something from either NSF or from the Department of Education to do a little bit bigger project on teaching. And then there's some really small grants. And these are the kind that I talked about being from collections. So the Institute of Oral History, the Mayborn Museum, and then some of these different teaching fellowships from the library. So if you happen to work in those areas, this is a small stipend that can help you to do some work. I just like to and it's hard to find those, so I like to have those links for you. Then if you are interested in some Texas state grants, I'm giving you these different websites. It makes it a little bit easier for you to find what you would want to look for. So the Texas Gov eGrants is the overall website, but sometimes it's easier to look on the specific agency website. Here at Baylor, we've gotten most of our funding from the CPRIT, the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute, and probably the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. So those are, if that fits your area, that's good to look just on those websites. So after you've looked through the internal funding, maybe you looked at some Texas funding, if that works for you, then you'll probably want to start looking for some other external funding. So we've created two different lists. So when we first came to Baylor, this particular Department of Research Development, our job was actually to find grants for people because we didn't have a lot of grants at Baylor. And so we started developing a lot of different potential funders, and we put them in these different lists. Then we decided, in the first list, were put into departmental categories for, anthropology, biology, art, And then we decided that was not as effective as we wanted to do it. And so we put it into a master list, which is on an Excel document. But sometimes it's easier for people getting started to just look at their departmental list. These are not updated with some of the description information as if it was finished in 2019. So most of it's a little outdated, but the links are usually good. And so if this looks like it's something that would work for you, you can check these links out, make this as one of the ones that you put on your funder list, and then look and see what's happening currently in that particular group. I will point out I usually have 2 links on almost everything we have. One is going to be a link to a particular grant or to the grants that that particular group provides. And the other link is to the website, because often the grant list is redone every year. And so the link gets broken. So if you can't find the grant link, you can go to the website and that should give you the information you need. So hopefully, as you go through the link for your particular department, you'll be able to find a few that would be useful for you, and you can go onto the website and see what would be helpful. I also have this Baylor master funding list, and this has been updated just in last spring. So at the top, you can see that I also have some links to our 2 search engines that we subscribe to, Pivot and Grant Forward. I also have links to ways that you can educate yourself on how to use those in more in depth than I'm going to be able to show you today, and a little description of them. And then I have I think altogether we have about 300 or 400 different funders that we've discovered. I have them divided into categories by tabs. So we have all the funders. I have ones that are specific for STEM, ones that are specific for humanities. So you pick which group that you're a part of, or you can pick based on your stage of career. So early career faculty, we originally did these lists focusing on early career faculty, but it's been wonderful as I've redone the list to find out that most of these funders actually fund a variety of the spectrum of places in your career. And so that's what I have here on the eligibility. It tells you this particular funder, George Bush Library, does early career, tenured, postdoc, and graduate students. And so I've taken this eligibility list and been able to divide them up. So if you're a postdoc or a graduate student or an undergrad, and I find that I try to promote that, because there's a lot of undergrads that could be getting research funding, and you might want to point this list out to them. This is available for anybody who's here at Baylor to use. I have 2 graduate student lists, because one is one that I created, and we have an external funding individual at Baylor and the graduate school, and he has his own list, and he's the person that can actually help graduate students write grants and find them. So if you have a graduate student interested in doing that, if you contact me, I can give you a link to Kevin. I also have it on the PowerPoint that I'll be sending to you. And then next Tuesday, I'm going to be doing my first grant workshop for international postdocs. And this actually would also fit for international graduate students. Basically, anybody who's not a US citizen or doesn't have a naturalization certificate or green card. This helps them to search for grants based on their citizenship status. So when you look at this list, you'll search, I have the sponsor website, and then I have the grants website, and then some description that will give you an idea. So like I said before, you're looking for different kind of funders that would be helpful for your particular research, and then keeping track of those funders, looking on their website to see what they're offering now, and keeping track of what they do as they go along. And this really is quite true, that sometimes there'll be a funder that doesn't have anything available for you right now, but down the road, they will come up with something. So it's good to keep track of them. So that's how I suggest that you work on that. Oh, and I would say that my suggestion for this list is that you download it, and then you go through it and just delete the ones that don't work for you. And then you'll have kind of a shorter list to keep track of. And that might be one way that you can keep track of your own list. So after you've done all those things that we provided for you, the tools that we provided for you, then you might want to work on Baylor's subscribed grant search engines, Pivot and Grant Forward. So this slide is really to talk a little bit about the 2 and how they're the same and how they're different. Both of them provide searches for federal, foundation, industry, and professional society grants. So you'll get really the gamut that's out there. I will say, because I sometimes forget, that there are some very small foundations that aren't in any sort of search engine, but they are available on Google. And so I always suggest that along with doing these, you do a Google search for your particular field, and then just grants or research grants, because I do occasionally, especially if you're looking for something kind of in a smaller grant, I have found that that has been where I've found some of the best grants for people. I just recently had someone who wasn't able to apply to a limited submission because someone else had already been chosen. And I looked through Pivot and Grant Forward, had not found anything at all. And I said, well, I'm just going to try a Google search. I put, it was Latin jazz music. So I did Latin jazz composition, fairly limited opportunity. And I said, grant. And I could not believe it because right at the top of the search engine, there was this very small, but exactly what he needed grant for exactly that area and a foundation that was small. So sometimes the Google search engine works really well. So it's not, we need to take advantage of that. So these two search engines allow you to search, they allow you to save searches, they allow you to have email updates. And that's really something to take advantage of. If you spend a little bit of time making sure your search fits your research pretty well, or maybe you have several areas of research, so you might have several different searches, or maybe you want one search that's just for federal grants and one that's for industry grants. Then they will email updates of anything new that comes under that opportunity. And that's very worthwhile. They will also host updates on their website of things that work for you. And both of them allow you to update your profile. And then through your profile and looking at your keywords and the publications that you have and other things about your research, they will give you different funding opportunities that once you go on their website, you can find them, and that will help you out. So you don't have to continue do all the searches as long as you do them and spend a little bit of time doing it the first time around. The difference between the two is I think Grant Forward has more smaller grants, and it also allows you to search by amount. And I just say that if you're beginning your grant search and you're not looking for a huge federal grant, you're looking for something small, or you're looking for something that may be more limited in the type of thing that it allows you to do, that sometimes Grant Forward can find those grants for you a little bit better than Pivot. But Pivot has a much better profile function. It already will have automatically web scraped and fulfilled your profile with a lot of things. You need to go back in and make sure that those are accurate and that they're up to date. But it does it, and Grant Forward does not do that. The other thing about the profile function in Pivot is that it allows you to search for other people at Baylor that might work for your research. I will give you a hint that often if you're looking for someone in our office might know someone that can help you. So you can always contact us and ask, who works on rural health, which is one of the questions I had once. And I was able to look through. I actually didn't know about how to use Pivot at that point. I wish I had. I was looking through different websites and different departments, but Pivot has a great profile function. And once you pull up someone's profile, you get a lot of information so that you can kind of look through and see what their research has been and then decide if that's a person that can help you, especially if it's someone that's actually out of your field, like you need someone who does statistics. You might go to the statistics department to find someone, but if you look up their research, you can find out if they work with exactly what you need. For both of those, you're going to need to create an account by logging in with your Baylor ID. My biggest searching tip, besides making sure that you really do fill out your profile and you use the limitations of the search, which I'm going to talk about later, is to make sure that you understand that when you're searching for grants, it's really different than when you're searching for journal opportunities. In journals, when you're looking for a journal article and looking for things in your field, you're really looking on very narrow terms. You're looking for what I use my analogy is you're looking in a haystack, looking for a needle inside that haystack, that small bit, area of research that you do. But when you're looking for grants, it's really the opposite. You're looking for a haystack that your needle of research fits under. So you want to search not with narrow terms, but with broader terms. For example, my husband works on H. pylori, which causes stomach cancer. So if he looked up H. pylori and his solution to stomach cancer and H. pylori is killing it with antimicrobial peptides. So if he looked up antimicrobial peptides or H. pylori, he might find grants on those, but he'll have a much better chance of finding grants that would fit his research if he looked up something like gastric cancer or stomach cancer. So you're looking more at a topic, and then because especially federal funders, especially foundation funders, but also federal funders are looking for the solutions to problems. Often what you're looking for in your search engine is the problem idea, and that can actually help you to find what you're looking for. In my area, I work with abolitionism, and rather than looking at William Wells Brown, who's one of the people I research, there might be a grant for William Wells Brown from the William Wells Brown Society or something like that, but it's better to look for the overall term of abolitionism, something like that. So I'm going to turn now and make sure that I can do this. We're going to look online. Do I have any questions while I'm getting set up for the second part?
There, one of these referenced foundations. Do these have foundations that just tend to receive applications, or only when there's a discrete application? Is that, or like,
Yeah.
is there a database of foundations, whether or not they have an RFA, for example?
Okay. That is a really good question. And I am trying to figure out how I can, just a second, share this.
The foundations you'll find on Pivot and Grant Forward are ones that do have RFAs. You'll also see that 90% of foundations do not have their own websites. And so I believe that it was 90-something%. It was on the foundation directory online last year. And so you'll find that you'll want to look through both. I like to look through both. I feel like Grant Forward does find some of the smaller ones, some of the charitable trusts that are governed, through different banks. But yes, everything that you'll find will be a funding opportunity. It's not just foundations that support or interested in what you're interested in doing.
Yes. And in fact, I hadn't necessarily planned to show him his website, but Casey Ashenfelter is the person who's in charge. Have you worked with Casey? Yeah. He's the one that has the application, the foundation directory that will list all the foundations, whether or not they
have that database.
He does. And he has actually asked me recently, do we need to make it available to other people? So yes, yeah, I did not know. He just said that very recently to me. And I don't know whether he's going to, I think it costs more if you make more than one person, but I'm sure because he's willing to do something like that, if you went in and you might even just want to go in and make an appointment and talk to him and find that. The one thing I will say in general, and this is a little bit different because Eric, because you are charge of an institute, you're not just an individual faculty member, so I think you have a little bit more of ability to talk with people at a foundation that isn't necessarily looking for you. You have and I think when working with foundations, the ones that don't have a RFP that you solicit, they're looking, then they don't ask for you to send something to them because they don't have enough people a lot of times to handle that. It's a relational one. And I know Templeton is very much that way too. We had someone at our previous conference who I got a chance to talk with him more later that really knows a lot about Templeton, and that's a whole process. So if you're doing the relational part, that's finding the right people and being the right person to talk with them. But I want to be cautious because if you're just individual faculty researching, yes, it can spend a lot of time working on that, and then it may not be available for you. So I would say about foundations, if they don't have a website, they're not wanting to be found necessarily. But if you're the right person that they really want, and that might be something that Casey can help you decide by looking at their website. And some of those foundations that are on Pivot and Grant Forward, and you can find out a lot about them on Pivot and Grant Forward and look at what they funded and look at their website. And maybe there's an opportunity to develop some relationships. And actually, for the most part, one of the differences I say between foundations and government grants is I encourage people to consider government grants because you do have a chance to talk to program officers. You did get a chance to get feedback. And sometimes it's very frustrating. You can spend, many hundreds of hours doing a proposal for a foundation, and then they basically just say no. and they don't have time or personnel to tell you why. And it may be that there's some real flaws in your proposal that you needed to address, which you will find out if you send to a federal agency. Or it may be they are going in a completely different direction and yours doesn't match, which is why sometimes, and a lot of foundations will have give you a letter of intent or a small pre-proposal. They want to see those first. They can quickly go through those and find out if you're a person that they should fund. But I will also say something about foundations is that some of the foundations that offer very tiny amounts of money will ask for a very long proposal. I've seen this, like $8,000, and you're spending 25 pages.
And a signature from the president.
Yes. And I will say, if you do get something that seems odd like that, you're $10,000, and you need a president's signature, that Casey's the person that can take care of that for you. And so he's great to get to know. And any foundation that you're doing, it's really a good idea to talk with Casey because sometimes he'll know about a relationship, or he'll know, he can find out things. Sometimes on the I was going to show you in just a moment, the websites of some foundations will have, you know, people you can contact will have awarded grants, but Casey for sure can look those up for you. So, and if you think he should make it available to everybody, you can give him your ideas on that. So as everybody can see my what I'm looking at. Okay, I was having trouble with this yesterday. So I'm on our website, and I just wanted to show you where some of these things are. So this is the OVPR website, and I'm looking under research development, and we have a variety of different things, but this is our find funding. And so all the different things I just talked about are right here. I also need to spend just a second and tell you about limited submission. If you find a grant that is limited submission, and I will warn you that some grants will not tell you this anywhere. That happened this year. There was a Duke fellowship, and nowhere in the grant did it say limited submission until I looked in the FAQ page. One tiny question, it said only one person could apply from an institution. And actually, sometimes they say it in a way that makes you think, well, maybe it's each department could apply, but no, it was actually, you know, overall Baylor. So that was really hard because more than one person wanted to apply to that one. But if you see that, and on Pivot and Grant Forward, they will actually a lot of times say that it's limited submission for you. So then your procedure is you would go to research@baylor.edu, do an email that says, I want to apply to this grant. Can I do that? Give them the link to the RFP, and then we'll get back to you and find out who. Stacey's really the one that looks at that. Sometimes you'll need to go through Casey if it's a foundation. He has several limited submission opportunities. I would say that with Casey, what I have discovered is that if you didn't get a chance to submit this year because somebody else had already been selected or had applied earlier, that often he puts you on the list maybe for next year. So that's something just to be aware of. And this website is where you would go, and it lets you know how. This tells you specifically our procedure, how we work. If it's within a certain period of time before the grant due date, then you're automatically chosen if you're the first person. This is also where our internal funding is. You can see the links for where you can go and find out more about that funding, but also how you can apply for that. And here's where our curated grant funding lists are. This is a little video that talks about the master list, and here's a list. In the PowerPoint, I have given you a link directly to the box folder that you can look at all the lists all at the same time. But if you want to look at them individually, I'm just kind of scrolling so you can see that there are ones for lots of different areas. And then, of course, we have our Pivot, Grant Forward, and grants.gov. And on these different pages, we also have some of the videos that are available. I also have lots of links for more videos to learn how to do the different ones. I think that's most of what I wanted to do there. So I want to start and look at Pivot. And that's not the page I want to start with. Okay, here we are. So you have to log into Pivot, put all your information in, check it out. And you can just search right here using keywords. You can go to the advanced search, which looks like any kind of library search engine. Different ways you can limit. I will tell you the hint that I'm going to talk about on Tuesday is really right here. They have a citizenship limitation. So if you are not a citizen of the US, you can say what country you are a citizen of, and that will help limit, or actually also give you some opportunities if there are some from that particular country. I actually like, this is something new that they have, which is a keyword search. And I think in some ways it might be the best way to get started, because these are the keywords that they generate. This is how they organize the information. And so it makes it a little bit easier than you trying to fumble to find the keywords. So it tells you, how much money for that particular area. Narrow down to biology. I'm going to go computer science, and then something I just worked on this week, which is cybersecurity. I think, did I get that here? No. There we are. So then it does a search for me with cybersecurity. So already I have 147 results. So that gives me a fairly limited number of things. And the other search tip that I have for you, along with maybe doing some sort of broader search terms, is to use these limitations on the side generously before you actually try to limit it more with your keywords. So in this case, I'm going to say I want only confirmed ones. And I'm going to say I'd like just research projects. So I'm down to 36 results. And I don't remember, there are, in both Pivot and Grant Forward, we have things from around the world. So this is the European Commission. At this point, I'm just looking for ones from the US. So there's 3 different ways you can do this, just by doing English, or by the country of the funder, or in this case, I'm just going to go for currency. So I have 10 results. That's a nice narrow group to look through. I might want to bring it broader if that's not enough and I don't find something in this particular group. I'm going to show you what one looks like when you go there. So this tells me that this I found not too terribly useful of other potential collaborators, but perhaps there's something in this. I don't know if there's that many people on cybersecurity here. So sometimes the information isn't as useful as you wish it would be. This is helpful here. However, it tells me there's 90 awards on this one. So it's a big grant that I can apply for, and they have different levels of that award. It gives me some of the abstract, more information about it, so I can kind of decide, is this going to work for me? And this is really helpful down here. This particular one, it tells me the deadlines, and this particular one is a reoccurring opportunity that's continuous. You don't have any deadlines. NSF has been doing that recently. I think it's wonderful because it lets people work on the proposal until they feel like it's really at the best, and then they submit it at that point. That isn't usually the case because a lot of times they have some kind of a deadline. And then, of course, you can go to the website, and you always need to go to the website to make sure this is completely up to date. So that's pretty much how it works on a Pivot. ProQuest, then I would say that the things that you would want to limit your search on would be, the funding type. Sometimes it's the applicant type, but more it would be your career stage is helpful to use. Sometimes keywords are useful. I often find that currency and is one of the best ones as well. So the other thing I wanted to talk about on Pivot is the profiles. So I've gone to my profile. I've gone to update my profile. Let's see if I can go over here and so show you how I got there. So this is actually showing you, first of all, the profile discovery from other groups at Baylor. So if I wanted to find people that were in the School of Social Work, I'd see the different results, and then I could also search by a term to find out somebody who did research in that particular area and pull up different people. And then if I'm looking at someone, it will show me, gives me their email, gives me their personal website, tells me a little bit about their job. This particular one doesn't show me as many things about their research, but sometimes it'll give you a little bit more links to particular research they've done. So you can figure out if that's somebody you'd want to contact and would help you in research. So this is how you make sure that your profile is updated. Go to the profile function, go to the personal profile and updating it. I don't have anything on mine because I don't look for research for myself, but you can put in your own links, your own ID. And also, if there are some things that don't show up on your publications, but are things you're interested in, like what you're doing next, you can put in your expertise, or you could put in your keywords down here. And that will pull grants that aren't necessarily going to be showing up just because of what you have for your publication. So I think that's kind of a tip for both Pivot and also for Grant Forward. So I think the other thing I think that's helpful on Pivot is if you want to go to a conference or you have a student who wants to go, this gives you lots of conferences within different areas. So it gives you maybe more than you are aware of, and that helps you to find things. Are there any questions before I go to the next one? Any questions on that? Oh, I forgot to talk about saved searches. So if I have a search that I've gone for, let's see if I have that one over here. Nope. I could just pick one really quick. Okay, so I like this search. I want to save it. Unfortunately, this should be large button, but this is where you would figure out where I'm going to save the search. And it also says, can you receive a weekly email update? And that's really helpful if you want to keep that search all the time. You can name that search. You can do several searches and get weekly email updates. If you don't want weekly updates, it will still save your search, and you can look at it on your homepage, and it will have any updates on the homepage, but you don't necessarily have to get those emails. This one only has the option of a weekly email. Grant Forward gives you a chance to have every day if you're really that excited, or once a month if that works better for you. You also can share the search, and sometimes I don't necessarily want to save a search, particularly in my situation, but I want to have that particular search, or I want to give it to someone else. So it gives you a chance that you can send it to your own email, and you can, if you're sending it to someone else, you can send a message to them. So that's helpful too, especially if you stumble across a grant that is helpful for somebody else. Are there any other questions? Move on. Okay, I'm going to talk. Here's Grant Forward. Grant Forward has like kind of a nicer web face, I think. It actually makes the grant search a little bit bigger, and I honestly don't like that too much because you can see fewer grants on a page. But anyway, so this one I've actually already done, and I've limited it: cybersecurity, open continuous. I want to show you that you can do amounts here that I think you can do this on Pivot, but it's not as easy. So if I'm looking for just a small amount, say under $10,000, I can limit it that way. And in this case, I have 44 results, which is actually interesting because I think that's a lot more than I would have gotten on cybersecurity on Pivot for a small amount. So it does show up some of these smaller grants. And I'm looking at one, I can look at one, and here I can decide if I'm on a research project, workshop, conference. I think they have a larger number of grant types that you could look at, which is also helpful, particularly if you're doing something like equipment. Those are hard grants to find, sometimes equipment or facilities things. You can also find some for publishing. There aren't very many grants that will do your publishing, unfortunately. And this one also lets you right here to talk about, lets you to do citizenship. And it also lets you know a little bit about limited submission. So if I'm looking here, very similar to Pivot, it has the application URL right here. It also, both Pivot and Grant Forward will sometimes give you a list of people that are your contacts. This is an NSF grant, and so they have a list of contact people here. This actually has a rather long list of people, program officers to contact. So you might want to try to narrow that by looking at the grant and finding out some previously awarded grants and finding out which program officer worked on one that was similar to what you want to do. It gives you the amount of grants, 90, and different people who can applicant types, cost sharing, and a few other things. I also like the fact that Grant Forward tells you other results of your search. And sometimes, actually, this one doesn't. It'll say what other people who saw this grant also looked at, kind of like at Amazon, where they're trying to sell you other things that are similar. So I guess they've taken a few tips from that. Grant Forward also has, just like Pivot, it allows you to update your profile. It does not web scrape for other profiles. We have to ask them to do that, and we've been considering whether we want to do that or not, because there's some other things along with that. But so it's not really as good of a place to look for other people at Baylor. I definitely go for Pivot for that. But if you do find someone here that, because I've been encouraging people to update their profiles, then you will be able to find a picture, which is nice, as well as a little bit more information. And so you can edit your profile very similarly. You'll put in your research interests, and then any, extra information that you want to put in that will scrape out some things. I will also say that the person who's in charge of Baylor's Grant Forward program, Lisa Nguyen, contacted me, and I had a conference with her, and she was just wonderful. And she offered to actually work with people. If you really can't find grants and you're looking for something, you've really tried different searches, she would do a personal consultation with you. And she would also do consultations, like if you're working in a department that wants to learn a little bit more about how to use Pivot or use Grant Forward, she would do a web seminar for you. So I'm happy to give you her email if you're interested in that. Any questions? Please let me know if there's some online as well before I move on. I wanted to talk, and please interrupt me if you want to talk to me at all. I want to talk a little bit about grants.gov. Sometimes I honestly think instead of going through the grant search engines, you're better off on federal grants or Texas state grants to go straight to either grants.gov or that particular agency. So that's what I really want. It's actually the insight about the agencies came to me at 10 o'clock last night. I made a new slide. So because I've really recently been doing this for people and it works better. So grants.gov is not great for NSF or NIH. Those are the bulk of the grants. There are just so many of them. It's a little hard to, you can search on here with keywords and things like that, but actually I think you're better off searching at the agency websites for those. However, some of the agencies like Department of Education and DOE and Department of Energy, DOD, are sometimes rather difficult to find things on their agency website, and they will point you to grants.gov. And I'm going to show you a way that you could search here and kind of find out, I think, more easily than the easiest way possible to see what's available in that. So you can see that the posted grants, I'm going to eliminate the forecasted grants right now. The posted grants are right around 2,000 grants that are available from the federal government in one of the agencies. I was going down and having people look at your eligibility, because there is one that's specifically for private institutions of higher education, until I found out when I click that, for some reason, all the grants from several of the agencies go away. I don't know why. So anyway, that's not as useful as I thought it would be. So I'm suggesting that you might want to consider going down to the different agencies. As you can see, there's limited numbers on some of them. For example, one of the places that people look for is Department of Education. There are 9 grants from the Department of Education. That's it. That's available right now. So if that's where you want to get your funding from, this is probably the easiest way to find what's available. I haven't looked a lot on the Department of Education website, but the things that I have looked for there are actually, I've worked on several of the grants, and they actually post them in a strange way. It almost looks like it's a columns. So you're nodding. Yeah. We've been very successful with those, I should say. If you want to do one of these grants, I think we won every single one that we worked on. So I'm very happy to work with people on these. But so this tells you the 9 that are available. You can kind of keep track of this. I think you can also, I think you could get updates on this. I forget exactly where you can go for that. You could certainly export these results and look through them. So you're interested in this grant. I will also say, if you're doing a federal grant, you usually have to go on grants.gov because this is where you apply from. There's that apply button. It gives you the synopsis of the grant, tells you all about it. Usually gives you the amount right here. Sometimes it tells you how many grants and the amount, which gives you an idea of how much you should be asking for. Tells you eligibility, tells you, about the department, gives you links to other information. And in this case, we get a grant contact, and often that's who you really want to be able to talk to and give your one pager and get a chance to decide whether this grant is going to work for you. It also has version history. This is particularly useful, I think, on DoD grants because they tend to come out with different versions, even while you're in the midst of applying for them. We've encountered that. Like all of a sudden now we're in version 4. We have to go back and redo that. So you want to, most grants though, is usually just one particular version. Any related documents that might give you some additional information about it. And then the package, which is helpful because this will show you the different forms that you'll need to fill out. And if you are unfamiliar with the forms, especially, or if there's something new you haven't done before, it's kind of helpful to get a chance to preview it and see what you're going to have to fill out. This, when you start applying for the grant with your URA, you'll be working with the CARA system. And CARA, I think, is the one that actually has a lot of these forms and fills a lot of them out for you. But this will give you a chance to kind of see what it is ahead of time if you're not familiar with those forms. I think that's probably, obviously you can search grants here using keywords as well. The other thing that's helpful is if you already know of a grant, and frequently people will say, I have this opportunity number somebody sent to me, but I need to get all the forms for it. And so you just fill in your opportunity number and that particular grant will come up. So any other questions on grants.gov? Yes. No.
Still eligible to apply for those grants?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. And it's probably, especially DoD grants are like the worst. My son is now involved in writing these kinds of grants. And I said, oh, you've got to help them out, do it better. Somewhere in there, it may say that there's some problems with that, but I'm not sure. It probably, there's lots of different agencies within DoD. So right. It would kind of depend. And they might have a better answer for you on that than that. But however, one of the things that our group does, if people have questions like that, if I had a grant to look at, and that's what we do, is I'll look at the bits of the grant and try to figure those questions out, which is why I can tell you that we had one grant we were working with DoD where we had 2 conflicting versions and they contradicted each other. We're in the middle of writing it. It's like, okay, which one comes up? So I don't find that for the most part on NSF and NIH. They do a little bit better that way, but that's a very excellent question. Thank you for thinking about that. Anything else that people have a question about? I have to move my little box here down so I can see. Okay. I wanted to talk about, because as I realized last night, really, if I'm doing NIH or NSF, I should have pointed that out over here in grants.gov. If I look at the NIH grants down here, it's like of the 2,000 grants, about almost 1,400 of them are from the Department of Health and Human Services. I wish they would divide this up, but that is NIH. It's CDC and a variety of other departments. And so it's really hard. If you're going to be doing that one, you're going to definitely have to be using some keywords, and you still have an awful lot to sort through. Yes.
When you click on the plus sign next to that, what happens?
That's a really good question. Maybe I would find something. You know what? You found it for me. Yay. Terrific. So that would be a way that you could find them. Excellent. Okay, I found something new, and I'm going to put that in my slideshow. Terrific. Great. You know, I saw that plus and I thought it was actually going to make it disappear. So there you go. So you can find this, the Centers for Disease Control. Excellent. So you can use this for that as well. Terrific. New search thing. Well, I'm going to go spend just a little bit of time talking about how you can also find things just basic on the government website. And I think for NSF and NIH, this is really helpful. This is their grants and funding contract. So when I talked about finding your funders, NIH may be your funder, NSF may be your funder, but it's someplace within, there's going to be a smaller institute inside of there that's actually your main funder, and that's true for DoD as well. So you would, in this case, you go to this webpage, and then you click here, and this gives you all the different institutes and information about them. Here they are, their numbers or their letters, so you can look there, but down here it gives you more information. You can kind of find those out. And there's the same sort of thing with NSF. So once you've found out which one is your home, then you can come back here and then just do your keyword basically through that. You can look at which organization is going to work for you. If you're going to be Fogarty, that's international things. You can find out if you're looking at research and development, so that's the kind of grant you want. This is your agency, and then you can do a keyword search within that. But even so, you've probably narrowed it down. I just have 17. So this is really a way I'm trying to find ways that you can quickly find what you need for your particular work. And this tells you the different activity codes as well as that notice. Oh, I will say one thing on this is that they have these notices that when you're looking for grants, they will have notices and they have actual grants. And so you want to get rid of the advanced search. I think you have to get rid of the notices and look specifically just for the grants, rather than just notices. Just going to be updates on different things that you want to have. So once you've found your grants, and that'll be the PAR, the PA grants, then you can look at the notices that are for that particular grant, which will be on this particular solicitation right there. Are there any questions on that confuse everybody with that? But basically, I'm just suggesting that if you're doing NIH, you might want to look straight on here, and NSF is the same. So actually, I went over here and I'd already searched a few things. We'll go back. Okay, here. This is the NSF funding search. And the one thing I did want to say about NSF is it is a broad group that fits not only, I mean, you always think about the hard sciences, but they also have social, behavioral, and economic health, which fits an awful lot of people. Pretty much anyone except for the arts and theater and music can maybe have a spot in there. It depends on the kind of research you're doing. I'm not even sure if some of the things that you guys are doing in your center might actually fit for this. So I encourage people to go to NSF because it is a big pot of funding. It's the second, the NIH is the biggest, any kind of health research, but then NSF has a big pot too. Go to their award search, put in some of your keywords and see if some grants come up that are like what you have to do. And I'll show you the award search in just a second. So, so how do you find grants for NSF? Same thing. We're going to look for a directorate. And within this directorate, here's biological sciences, but I was just talking about this directorate of social, behavioral, and economic sciences. So you have cognitive sciences, you have science and engineering, multidisciplinary, and social and economic sciences. And so that is really a pot where you can look at their specific agency, look that up, the webpage of that particular agency, see the kinds of things they fund, and that could be really helpful for you. So say I'm going to just go ahead and go for this. Sciences, and this is the one where they have I know there's another link on the NIH, but I know this one here. It's the Dear Colleague letters, which are having emphases that they want grants to have, but they're not actual grants themselves. I'm going to click that one off so that what I'm finding then are just going to be the awards that are available. So I have 32 results from this particular directorate. You can also look under education level. So there's 5 of these that graduate students could apply for. And so that gives you a chance to look through, these are the grants that are available, and maybe we'll find something that would work right straight here. I think that makes it a little bit easier for you to find. And then you could look at some archived ones, but mostly we're looking for the current funding activities. So, and then if you were to go to this particular one, it's going to, And NSF has just created this new website, which has a beautiful format. This is the actual guidelines for that particular grant. That'll be your RFP. But this gives you a lot of good information and tells you the due dates, nice synopsis. Sometimes it has the program contacts. It also often they will have some video slides and webinars that will help you with this funding opportunity. That's useful. And then down here is the great part about NSF is they will let you let you know what other projects are funded by this. And that brings you straight to the awarded grants search engine. So here I am. These are all grants that were funded by that particular application. And I wanted to show you this because this is where you can actually search for grants to find out if there's something within NSF that is within the field that you want to do. But before I do that, I want to show you, here's a career grant. And when you look at these awards, you can get the abstract. You'll find out the program manager. And if this happens to be something that you work in, you would maybe find this program manager and want to be contacting them about your grant, giving them a one-pager of description of what you want to do, and finding out if they would be willing to talk to you. Both NSF and NIH are very clear at every single seminar I go to, and I've been to many. Their last slide is always contact us early and often. They really want to talk to you. They want to talk about your grants, and they want you to contact them to make sure that your grant as it comes in is the best possible grant and goes to the best possible place. They're all people. And so just like we would find with any other group, sometimes some of them are more encouraging. Sometimes some of them are more, they'll get to you more quickly. But in general, they all are supposed to want to come and contact you. So I encourage you to do that. This will tell you like the awarded amounts. It also gives you the abstract. So you can find out from these different kinds of abstracts, any agency that you look at, when you look at these awarded grants, what has been done under this, what's the scope of this work, and what kinds of things that they were including. It often in NSF will tell you what they do for their broader impacts as well. And that gives you a lot of information as you're trying to decide whether your grant will fit under this, but also whether this is something that, how much you would do, what kind of work you would do in order to fit into this particular grant for this particular amount of money. So I find that that's really helpful. So if you want to find out, look at this award search, you can do a simple search where you just put a couple of your keywords from your work, or you could do the advanced search where you can do keywords. Or the other thing is you can look up at principal investigator. I would suggest if there's somebody who publishes in your field that you know has been funded by NSF, look them up, find out what kind of grants they've done. Another one of my big hints is that sometimes there are, you can look at journal articles and find out what has people have funded in your field. But the most current, well, often it takes a while from the time the work is finished to the time it is actually published. Yeah, I mean, somebody was telling me like 2 years in her field. So they're, when you look at their published work, that's 2 years. They're not doing that anymore. So if you want to find out what the people in your field are doing right now, you want to look at their grants that they've gotten, the people who are top in your field. So that could be actually very helpful. It kind of tells you the trends of what's going on. And NSF, like I said, it's a pretty big tent, and it's a place where lots of people can find things. So are there any, I think there's probably more I could say, but are there any other questions about NSF? I did want to go to one foundation funder. I've just picked the Louisville Institute because it's a good example. We've had a lot of funding from Baylor. In fact, as I was doing this morning, I found there's a new person that I didn't know had been funded recently. So when you go to a foundation funder, the most important thing is you really want to make sure that you are matching their mission. So I usually suggest people start by just really looking at their website and what is it they want to do. You want to match what you want to do to what they want to do, or hopefully find one that's already wants to do things that you want to do. And this particular one says that they want to fund grants and fellowships for people who lead and study North American religious, so it's North American, not global, religious institutions, practices, and movements. So it's not just the church. There are broader tent than that. It advances scholarship to strengthen the church, the academy, and wider society. So you have to be doing something, no matter what grant you have, that fits within that. And then they give you more information. This is funded by Lilly, and I recently discovered, I have a list of, it's in the PowerPoint, of 5 different funders that are basically in field of faith. And 5 of them are actually funded by Lilly. I did say 5, all of them except for Templeton are funded by Lilly. So Lilly is really the one funding through these different agencies. So then you can look at their programs. The fellowships are mostly for people that are not faculty members, pre-doctoral and postdoctoral. And the grant programs, they have 3 of them: the Pastoral Study Project, the Grant for Researchers, and the first book, Grant for Scholars of Color. So you can find out what's available there. And then and apply now and learn more. You can find more out about what's available. Their application dates are here. And then, of course, I always suggest that along with looking at what the application is, you want to make sure you're looking at what they have already awarded so that you can find out whether your project matches what people have had in the past. So this is where I was looking down and I found out that we have a new first book grant for Scholars of Color right here. So they do a great job because you get to know the person, you know where they're from, and then they give a fairly large synopsis of what that person is going to be doing in their book. And then it lets you know a little bit more about a similar grant. So most foundations will have that sort of information available. So it's important that once you find a grant, you look at the agency, you find a grant whichever way you find it, from my curated lists or from Pivot or on the agency website. Then you look at that, whatever that agency is, you look at the grant, you look at the solicitations specifically, all the things that are required. You look at previously awarded grants, so you know what's been what they're expecting you to do in that funding. Make sure that that matches. You look at the what the agency wants to be funding to make sure that that matches what you do, and then you know that it's really, you're ready to click that apply button and be ready to do that funding. So I I just have, I think, just a few minutes left. I want to take questions. And do I have any questions? Anybody in chat? I've really gone through a lot of these different parts that are in the second one as I've gone along. The difference really between foundations and the biggest difference, I think, between a foundation grant and a government grant is you don't get feedback necessarily from a foundation. So I do encourage people to at least consider doing some government grants so you can get feedback on your ideas, which are not only helpful for the grant itself, and for getting funding, but it's also helpful because it will give you feedback on your idea that you're researching before you actually do it, to make sure that those people that are going to be looking at your publications have had a chance, the same kinds of people will have a chance to say what you know, give you some suggestions on what you're doing before you get started on your grant. I talked about the tent of NSF, that it's bigger than you might think. Things that you want to do in deciding whether a grant is right for you is, checking eligibility and dates, what you'll need to apply, any funder requirements, whether they have some things that can help you out, whether they'll let you talk to them. Here are some things that you can look for in some previously awarded grants, and why it's useful to help you look through those. And here's some links for searching previously awarded grants. That right here, the Matchmaker from NIH lets you put in actually an abstract of your own, which will help match you with grants and program officers. And so that's really helpful. I wish everybody else had one like that. The NEH, if you're doing National Endowment of Humanities, has a query form that lets you put in some, whether it's the kind of grant that you're looking for, or whether it's a person, or whether it's what your group of things that you do for your work. And here is some more information that I have here that helps you to search those grants. And I do want to stop and take 1 second to do this. I have a Baylor awarded grants information for NSF and NIH that I've compiled, and I have that available along with their abstract. So if you want to find somebody else at Baylor that's done that grant, you can find it here. For Arts and Humanities, I have a variety, not all the Arts and Humanities grants, but a lot of different ones. You can find out, hey, I'd like to do a grant in this area, or find out what kinds of things can be funded. So you can just click on those links. Those are all on Box. And then one last thing that I haven't actually given out before is I have compiled some funding rate tables for NIH that are a little difficult to find. So if you're working in the National Institute of Cancer, NCI, Cancer Cancer Institute, and you want to find out whether I should do an R03, a small grant, or an R21, and which one of those you would have the best chance of having funded, this table will help you decide. The other thing it'll help you decide is if you can apply either through the National NCI, or you can apply through one of the other institutes. You can find out the funding rate differences between those two. I have years 2022 and 23. For NSF, I have this, they have an interactive website, and that, which does basically the same thing. So it helps you answer that question of which institute you should move your grant to, and how does that help you in your funding rate. So that, I think, is a kind of a helpful thing as you're doing one of those two grants. And last thing is just any questions that you have, please always contact me. Stacy and I always talk about the fact that we are the ones that can answer or find someone to answer any questions that might be difficult for other people to find. We know enough people across campus, we can usually find that. So please, are there any questions from anyone on Teams? Anybody here in the room? I'll stay around for as long as anybody wants to talk. I'm happy to help you out. And please contact me if you want to just have a follow-up personal conversation about your own grant work. I'm very happy to do that at any time. Just give me an email and I'd be happy to talk to you.